it's one of the things that I love about the records, because we have, as you know, through our training, we have different tools, right? How we learn how to navigate within the Akashic field. We learn how to ask questions. We have our grace points through our lineage that help us set ourselves aside and sit back and, where's my mind, where's my body, where's my spirit, where are my emotions, and what's happening in all of these different places.
I would like to welcome Wendy Sue to the show. And Wendy, I am so excited to have you. A little bit about Wendy, which I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail because she has an amazing story and I want her to do all the talking. But Wendy and I met due to our connection with the Akashic Records. And you have such a fabulous story that I would love for you to share a little bit about what you do and how you got started with the Akashic Records and just a little bit about your journey.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa, for having me here. I appreciate that very much. So I have a background in business. I've been in banking. I've been executive assistant. I've been in that mainstream world for most of my life, the first 40 years. But I always felt like there was something outside of myself because I was alive. My early childhood experiences weren't easy, right? There was a lot going on. And then at 30, I started healing from sexual trauma and drug abuse and a lot of different things, that a path I had taken from the sexual trauma. And I started healing. And during that time of healing, I was camping with a friend. And I saw this, we were sitting on the river and I saw this big, huge bird fly overhead. And I jumped out of my inner tube and I ran after the bird and I said, I have to find a feather from that bird. I have to. It was like this thing that rose up inside of me. I couldn't help it. I just knew it was so real for me that it never left me. Even after my friend said, I've never seen a bird like that in Arizona. I've never seen that information. She'd been camping there for 10 years. So I went home, went back to my bank job, ended up moving from where I was in Arizona to South Carolina, going into mainstream work again. Only I became a Girl Scout leader there. And one time we were hosting a weekend for Girl Scout leaders and I was teaching, and because I was the main facilitator there, I was doing dishes, cleaning up, exhausted, so tired. And I heard spirit, this voice from out of nowhere, come to me and say, go to the fire. And it's like, no, I'm too tired. Like, no, go to the fire. I could feel it right now in my heart. So I'm stubborn, but I'm also obedient. So I went to the fire and I went and sat down next to this girl and she started talking. And what she was talking about was Reiki and really wanting to get Reiki into the Girl Scouts. So I was listening and she said, well, contact me. My email is Big Raven Medicine Woman. And I was like, that same feeling I had in the prophecy in northern Arizona when I was camping showed up when she told me her name. Mm-hmm. So a couple weeks later, I went to the Reiki share and there was a woman there, Rosemary Swanson, who is the mantle holder and one of the board members of Akashic Records Consultants International. And she was there and I heard her talking over in the background. I kept looking at her, really drawn to her. And as she was talking, she started laughing and she said, nobody really knows that my nickname is Feather. So I really did follow the big Raven Medicine bird to the feather. And that was 20 years ago and I haven't looked back since.
Yeah. Well, I love these types of stories because, we never know what the signs are going to lead us to. And, I want to thank you. Good job. Even though you were a little bit stubborn, you followed. And, that's something that we can all take note of just understanding that, sometimes these messages, we understand that they're really profound at the time, but we don't know where they're going to lead us. And if we listen to that little inner voice, that little something that says do this and we can actually follow it, here we sit today How amazing. How
And
amazing.
I've also found for me personally that I get impatient. When I have something that like it lands so deeply within me, it's like my brain starts like, well, how do I make that happen? Where do I go next? What's
Yeah.
going to happen? And if I can sit back and relax into it and really just understand that it was a premonition or a forecasting of what could be possible and hold on to it as sacred rather than as something I have to travel towards. It
Yeah.
makes such a big difference in my nervous system. It also allows for curiosity too,
Yeah.
because there's
Well,
an openness, not a focus.
absolutely. And that is so important because when, especially when we're starting in this type of work and we start getting these messages, we want to analyze it to death.
Mm.
So stay in our mind and try to figure out, what does this mean? What does this mean? And as we, 20 years later, if the more that we can, just like you said, just honor it and recognize that, okay, this is going to lead me somewhere. And you just said it, just getting out of that mind so that we're not constantly creating stories. And then when we're staying in those stories, they make it very well could lead us down the wrong direction because we're trying to analyze. Oh, this must be what this means. Oh, I see a feather in a window or a painting of a feather. This must be, I need to buy this painting or what, whatever these little stories are that, that we create. And then we miss the message. We miss the path because we're so in our heads.
It's one of the things that I love about the records because we have, as you know, through our training, we have different tools, right? How we learn how to navigate within the Akashic field. We learn how to ask questions. We have our grace points through our lineage that help us set ourselves aside and sit back and, where's my mind? Where's my body? Where's my spirit? Where are my emotions? And what's happening in all of these different places? Because sometimes I am going literally in that many different directions. Yeah. My mind's over here, my body's over here, my spirit's soaring, and my emotions are crying. And it's like, oh, what is going on with that lady, right?
Yeah.
At least from an internal place. So it's good to be able to find your center and have the tools to do that.
Okay, so you just opened the door. So what you just said brought a lot to surface that a lot of people aren't aware of. Can you go back and kind of break down what you're talking about in the tools that you may be referring to? Because so many people don't understand what the Akashic Records, what our Akashic Records, what they truly hold, and the gift and the guidance that they can provide, because they can only see one dimension. Is the word that's coming to me to say of what they are, and they really don't understand the whole, everything that we know about what all this field encompasses. So can you kind of go back to the different areas that you're talking about, the mind and the body? And
well, so the records are open for this podcast, just so you know. So if you see me like looking up or see me doing like taking a pause, that's because I'm listening.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to be a bull in a china shop. Not only am I a Taurus, I also just am very earth oriented and move really fast and do all of that. And one of the things that I've learned from the records is how to slow down. So my body moves fast. My mind moves very fast. I'm pretty guarded in my heart in the past. So I tend to have a forward, almost like a V in my body's moving forward. My mind's moving forward and my heart is all tucked back and protected. So while I can appear very friendly here, there's this place where I'm not available in the past. What the records have done for me in looking at where's my mind, where's my spirit, where are my emotions, where's my body, it's like, okay, so my posture, am I being centered here? Are my shoulders over my hips? So yoga helps us with that, if that's a tool, right? Breathing can really help us calm this mind down and take a breath and move into a place where we're more curious rather than re-traumatizing ourselves over and over and over again. Helps the breathing meditation, walking outside, slowing down, watching a funny show. All of that helps us move into a place in our body where we're more relaxed. If you really know what you love to do and you can stay present with what you love to do, you find that at the end of the day, you're much more relaxed, much more available for your dreams, much more available for the inquiry of what's next or what's true for you, rather than being pushed from behind or pulled forward by the environmental teachings, whether it's nature, nurture, all those things that can influence us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so exactly what you're saying, I think is so important at this time for people that are kind of learning how to adjust to this 5D energy, this higher vibration. And we're finding ourselves getting a little bit lost.
Yes.
And we're finding that there's a lot of conflict within us because we're so ingrained in these old belief systems and so structured in this conditioning that it's been going on for centuries. And so here we sit, and we have our body is conditioned to this heavier, denser energy, the 3D energy. And then this 5D energy is coming in, and we're absorbing it. And it's the higher frequency, and it's bumping up together. And so where we are right now is this transition of letting go of these old belief systems that are that heavier, denser energy, and allowing this higher vibrational frequency to come in and allow it, what I'm hearing, because my records are open as well, allowing it to settle. Yeah. And so what happens when we're trying to adjust to this higher frequency is that we go a little bit crazy. And I'm saying it broadly, in the sense of, where our physical bodies are going through changes, our belief systems and our mind is going through changes, our physical environment is going through changes, the people that we're used to being around, that we've had around for, years and years and years, old friends, family, everything is shifting and changing. So how do you see and how do you recommend individuals working through this?
Yeah, that brings tears to my eyes. I'm so used to, in the past, efforting to make things happen. In the household I was raised in, you learned to jump. I learned to jump before my dad asked what to do, right? Yeah. Learn all that anticipation, which actually in my work is awesome because I can be available. I can see the end result. But what I used to do is want to push the end result, to have my own agenda, to try and control it, to try and make things happen, try and keep people happy, try and help my addicted friends, try and stay in relationship. So what I'm realizing is that actually the more effort I'm putting in, it's old patterning. I've learned through the Akashic Records, through my own life process, to actually try and settle back a little bit, breathe into myself, notice what my agenda is, notice what's happening within me. And it's easier, honestly, for me to want to get up and out. Let's go do something so that we're not having to sit here in this discomfort or this heartache or this confusion, because I really feel like confusion is a big part of this shift. We were holding on to a particular way of being. Yeah. And we just cannot hold on to it anymore. It's going to go whether we want it to go or not. Yeah. We are going to shift whether we want to shift or not. So having the ability to go with the flow a little bit is important, and to be really aware of your propensity to want to hold on or to make things happen or to do it an old way. Right? Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so how can the Akashic Records help us transition through this time?
Well, for me personally, it's going in pretty much on a daily basis and saying, okay, what do you want me to know now? Or I had this reaction with somebody the other day, and it feels like an old reaction. Can you give me a different way to look at it? Or they might just say, masters, teachers, and loved ones, who are the record keepers, as I know them, might just say, yep, you did it again. Good girl. And we know you have a goal not to do that again. So let's go in and see how we can prevent that next time.
Yeah.
But we're still human.
Very much so. Oh, are we still human? Yeah, I had a situation come up a couple of weeks ago, and I've been doing this work for 30 years, not the Akashic Records, but just trying to let go. It started this journey of letting go and shifting those old belief systems started 30 years ago. And I did a breathwork session a couple of weeks ago, and holy cow, it's like, seriously? I've been doing this for 30 years and this is coming up now. I haven't addressed this yet. It's like, okay, well, here comes my humanness again.
Well,
And
I also, I apologize. Go ahead.
no, it's all good. Yeah.
What I wanted to say is, in my practice, personal practice, and in my business practice, actually it's my passion practice because I love the records. What I understand is that we cannot work with everything at one time.
Mm-hmm.
We really, as tough as we are, we're very fragile in our ego, which we need to move through this three-dimensional place, has kept us safe. These stories we've developed keep us safe from the hurt that we gained in our innocence, right?
Yep.
So it feels, it's very layered, as you said earlier. We deal with part of it, and we deal with part of it. And then, so it might show up very frequently, and then it might be 6 months, and then it might be a year, and then it might be 2 years. And it does feel like our brain's like, oh my gosh, here it is again. But if we really don't lose sight of how much self-love, self-work, self-endeavoring we've done, self-reflection is the word that I'm hearing, then our brain could say, you haven't done anything. You haven't made any progress. You haven't, with that little voice. But really, we've just come so far that we're ready to release another aspect from ourselves. Mm-hmm. That's how deeply it can be embedded in our experience.
Mm-hmm. So in your experiences, how have past memories, past beliefs come up to you so that you've recognized that it's time to let them go?
I'll give you a recent example, like 2 days ago. So I flew to California. I just got back yesterday. I had a very dear friend transition. And so I flew out there for her service. And on Sunday morning before the service, we're out there, we're putting up chairs. It's under the oak tree. We're laying all this stuff out, and very busy. And I felt very blessed to get up at 5 a.m. and sage the whole thing and start building the energy. But by the time everybody showed up to do the chairs and do all this stuff outside, I had gotten my business face on, and I was like going like this, and I was managing all the things. And this lady walked up to me and she said, I love that business face of yours. Said that with a smile on her face. I did this quick internal, like, ooh, time for me to exit.
Yeah.
Because I know myself well enough that when that face shows up or that energy shows up, that if I don't listen, then I'm going to tip over into control. Or I'm going to tip over into tears. And those are two faces of the same coin.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah. And how powerful. And the reason why I'm laughing so much is because I so understand what you're saying. Oh, we have a job to do. Okay, let's get serious and let's structure and let's make sure that the chairs are this far apart from each other and they've got this much leg room, to where we are. We're so conditioned to be, so structured that I think for me, what I'm finding and what I'm finding out for a lot of other people is that this transition into this energy, it's about letting go. But we are so conditioned to be in control that it's really hard for our minds to be able to say, no, take a deep breath and just go with the flow. Let things unfold, which goes back to the feather that you were talking about from the very beginning of how we always want to create the story and we want to create the structure or the control around the situation to fit. What I'm hearing is to dot every I and cross every T. And, where we're having to understand is letting go of that specific control and allowing things to unfold as it's not perfect. Okay. It's not the picture in the magazine, but you know what? Let's just do it. Let's just allow it to happen. Yeah. And how hard is that for us to let go? It's a struggle.
Well, what is interesting, what I'm hearing from the records right now, and they're showing me that I feel like the right to show up here now with these words, it's a whole different kind of control, because this kind of control has you in the driver's seat, not as the captivated one that has to control all the things you're setting your intention. Your tool is part of the intention. It's the feeling of, this is what I want and this feels safe to me. It's trusting that the universe will take care of you. It's knowing who your support system is. Right? Like that, when that lady that said to me, oh, I love this business space. She knows me. And I heard her say the words like, ooh, honey, even though she used much kinder words, but I trusted her. So who do we trust?
Yep.
Who do we know that we can actually ask, what about this? I'm having doubt. Or who do we trust to give us advice that we don't have to take it, but it just gives us more information?
Okay.
And then how present and aware are we to the signs that are being laid out for us as we're moving through our day, or as a book falls off the shelf, or as, whatever.
So I think that that's an excellent subject. Because again, where we are and what we're looking at now is that, the way that the guides always describe it to me is that we're the forerunners. We're the front line of these individuals that are transitioning into this new energy. And we're kind of all flying by the seat of our pants. It's kind of like, I'm experiencing this, or I'm having this thought, or I'm going through this emotional breakdown. And I can feel the energy that's turning around in me, and I can feel these things being released, but I don't have a support system around me to guide me through it. And I find that this is a little bit of a lonely road. And so when you're talking about a support system and who you can trust, how do we identify those individuals that we can have these relationships with, and we can recognize what's going on within us to help us through this time without what I'm hearing is spinning off the rails.
I think the first thing we have to do is be brave. We really have to admit that we don't know it all, which can be very vulnerable.
Yep.
And then to look around at the people who you're drawn to, not the ones that want to tell you what to do, maybe not even your oldest friends. Do you have an invitation for new people to come into your life? Do you have teachers, whether, spiritual teachers, books? I mean, it can be somebody online. It can be a book that you love. It can be a writer that you love. It can actually be an Akashic record teacher or a Reiki teacher, but somebody who actually looks you in the eye and feels you and is considerate of who you are and what you're doing and your efforting. There's nothing worse than having somebody say, well, B is good, but an A would be better, right? Allowing you to really be who you are in the moment, but holding the best and highest good for you in the future. So I think trust is important. I think really understanding that you don't want somebody that's going to have you be dependent on them for the information. Somebody that will reflect back to you and then give you some time and space to process it and then come back. Life is not a sitcom. In the old days, sometimes I wonder if I had a past life where I used to write letters to somebody and then the horse would take it away, and then I'd go about my world, and 3 months later I'd get something, I get to think about it, and I get to send another letter back. That's really how our growth is. Where is the philosophy that we're looking towards? Where is the wisdom of the words that we can take all the way in and down and into the earth? And to me, that can be a moth moving towards the flame, which can be very dangerous. Being attracted to that which isn't good for us. Or it can be, just the water rolling downhill, which is taking the path of least resistance. And sometimes taking the path of least resistance is the best path to take. Cowardice, not surrender.
Yeah. And I completely agree with everything that you're saying, and it's right on track. And I think that what's really important, you had mentioned that, having that support system around you that is supporting you and not basically I'm going to use the word dictate to you because that's what my records are saying. And, I think that where we are is that we understand that everybody's on their own path. You and I have our own guides. We have the information that's provided to us to carry us down our paths individually. And we recognize that there's a lot of people out there that have special gifts that kind of feel like their way is the only way. Mm-hmm. And that if you come to them, then it's their way, in that if you're having a certain experience, this is specifically what's happening to you, and this is how you resolve the issue. In which I honor that. Everybody do what they feel like is important to them. But what is important for us that are going through this journey, recognizing that each one of us is individual. Each one of us have our own path. And the Akashic Records proves this constantly. This is what they're based on. It's in every individual soul. Every individual soul has a specific path and journey. And so when we find ourselves falling under the umbrella of somebody else's belief systems or teachings that control our path to stay within their journey, it's really important that we all understand that we might take bits and pieces of different things if it feels right. But if there's not that independence or freedom that's going along with somebody's instruction, then we might want to question it. We might want to make sure that it fits and it settles with us. And I think that's why it's important to find that person of comfort. And what I'm hearing is comfort person, the comfort person that can help us be who we're meant to be with love and support. And that, again, we hear that thing, holding space, and how important holding space is for each one of us.
And I also think it's important to know your own propensities. I am stubborn. I have it in spades. And so, I have had teachers in the past that's like, they'll try and tell me a couple of different times. And then it's like, look, can you look at it this way, or take this to the records? And it's much easier for me to find my own way through where I'm stuck. So for me personally, I like to get the information, mm-hmm. put it in my little pot, go to the records, peruse it over a period of time, and then find what settles in with me energetically. Yeah. Right. And it isn't just a place in my mind. What I find is if I'm still, I don't know if you do this, Lisa, but I'll wake up in the middle of the night. It's like, I wish I would have said this. Well, they said that to me. I should have responded like this. And next time, this is what's going to happen. And they're not going to get one up on me.
Yeah.
And so if I'm in that place in my mind, I know that I'm not going to be able to actually do my work around it until take a breath, maybe over a couple of days, get out and dig in the dirt, or plant a tree, or talk to my friend, or cry, whine, create my own story, and then realize the ridiculousness of it, laugh, settle in my own alignment, and then say, okay, what's real here?
Absolutely.
Because I'm not always wrong. And I'm not always right.
Yeah.
So, and when we have an agreement or a disagreement, it does take more than one person. Mm-hmm. Like it takes our own spirit and our own body, or it takes our mind to agree with what our emotional body is doing. So an agreement is never just between one person. And we've got all of these facets of ourselves that have to come into agreement. Mm-hmm. I have a 5-year-old that lives within me, and she's a knife thrower. I know where she came from. She deserves to be here. And our agreement is, when I feel her wake up in the morning, and she's a total aspect of me, is that she's present when I wake up. She gets to pick my socks. Whether they match or not, I'm wearing those because I don't want her. I just, she can be with me all day long, but I don't want her to lead me all day long because it's dangerous.
Yeah. Well, I am so glad you just brought this up, because not everybody may understand what you're talking about. So can you be more specific on who the little girl is?
Yeah. I'm asking the records I'll take it from my own personal experience. I was kidnapped at 5 years old. So my family, I was found, my family never talked about it. When my dad died, I actually found the article of me being kidnapped at 5 years old, but it was never discussed.
Mm.
So I had, as just a survival mechanism, I had these fractures, right? I have twin 5-year-olds that hang out with me, and they're aspects of me. Now I've done the work to bring them back in so I can really feel their vibration. But there were times in my life where when I was feeling really, really, really threatened, I, Wendy Sue, the adult, would totally disassociate with my body. That 5-year-old would show up in whatever situation, create this total chaos and havoc. Then I would show back up, look around the room, and I've got all these people that are like, what? They're really mad at me. And I'm like, wow, I actually don't know what just happened.
Mm.
So that shadow piece of me, which was created in real time in my kidnapping when I was 5, had this place where when I was being threatened and I couldn't handle it, my shadow aspect would show up and say, okay, people, we're going to have everybody back off right now, and this is how we're going to do it. And then when I would show up as the adult, and obviously I have had therapy with this. I've worked with the records. I do Reiki. I've had, body talk, several different aspects throughout that I'm led to. I think multiple tools are important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
It does. And I think that story is so important because there's so many people that have gone through different forms of severe trauma. Mm-hmm. And, we talk about our shadow selves, and this is what you brought up. And I think that there's a lot of people that don't understand that term. Can you define that term for us?
Well, it's interesting because we always think of the shadow as bad. But for me, because of the trauma in my household, you never really want to be too happy, because if you got too happy, then something bad was going to happen. So if I could moderate my emotions and not get too high, then it felt like less to fall when the drama came. So I actually had to uncover my shadow of happiness. Mm. So it's anything that's in the background that helps us operate through the world that we're actually not aware of how it's controlling us. It's been hidden, tucked away in the subconscious. And what I'm hearing from the records is we all have shadow aspects. Mm-hmm. It isn't just one person. Psychotherapy is a good place for it, but also, we need to have grace with ourselves to understand that this human experience and this growth that we're going through is one of discovery. It is an adventure. If that brain is like, well, and you did that again, and you're like this, and we're not, if we're just willing to stay in the story and not do the exploration of, well, what is true for me, right? Mm-hmm. Stubborn actually really works for me sometimes.
Yeah. So
I'm not working with that whole shadow or that whole piece of it. Yeah, mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Well, and part of this transition is, the major part of this transition is facing those shadows and being able to see that they're no longer serving me, and being able to let them go. Or if they are serving you in a specific way, do we hold on to them? So it's almost kind of like figuring out the discernment of what's being presented.
Yeah, the awareness first, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, there it is again. There's my business face. There it is again. And then we often want to say, well, why is that? Why is that here? Why is that? And that is that that's that brain, that mental energy, yeah. And it gets going really fast. A why question isn't always answerable. And if we can ask the question for many different reasons, like, hi, here you are again. Is there something I can do for you? What's the message you have for me? What are the recent events that may have brought you forward? Mm-hmm. So, I thought you were gone and I got rid of you. I see you're here again. What's the message? Yeah. important thing that I utilize in my own personal life.
Yeah.
Because it's showing up for a reason.
Yeah. And it is showing up for a reason. And it's important for us to recognize, the most common thing I think that people experience when something from the past comes up is that memory. You may be driving down the road and then all of a sudden something flashes into your mind that happened to you when you were in the second grade.
Right.
Okay, it's coming up for a reason. And it's funny how the universe works this way. It must be time for me to address this. And so it's being presented, and how am I going to process through it? So you mentioned different modalities that have helped you. And I think it's so important that we do understand that, boy, I've got a toolkit too. There is not just one specific thing that will help me process through everything. So, but what I am curious about is, how do you use the Akashic Records to address these shadows?
I really want to answer that question, and the records just keep saying to me to say this out loud on this podcast. One of the things that people don't realize is how the sense of smell, the olfactory, is so triggering. So you may not be aware that somebody's cologne just went by you, or you smelled baking bread, or so all of our senses get involved in our recall. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why the records want that to come out, but that smell is really, really important. So you might say, what happened? But when you're looking at what happened, include all of your senses. I saw this, I smelled this, I tasted this. Visually, this is what I was looking at.
Yeah.
So that you can piece the picture together.
Yeah.
Be curious.
Yeah.
Try not to be judgmental. Be curious.
Yeah. Extremely important. All the senses are so important, and we've shut them down. We don't know how to use them. Yeah.
Exactly. We've allowed our mind to fill in all the blanks, and our mind can only go to the past.
Yep. So,
go ahead.
You're going to go ahead and answer how you use the records to help you to process?
When I first started, I didn't. I was too afraid. I mean, I didn't like myself well enough to want to really be in the routine of doing the records. Mm-hmm. So when I was doing my own personal practice, I would open them and I'd say, well, what should I wear today? What would be good for me to eat? How much do you love me? And I didn't really want to dive into really the important things. And as I started to work with other people doing consulting, I realized how much source, God, the universe, whatever, please insert your own word, loved everybody, regardless of where they were in their life. I worked with rapists and murderers and, pedophiles and all kinds of people within my practice. And when I realized that you are loved no matter where you are, then I started to think, well, I must be loved too. And so as I gained more confidence, right, in working with the records, then I've really been able to take anything that I want to them. I have a practice personally of journaling at least 5 days a week. I set up in the same place. I have my coffee. I have my favorite pens. I have a journal that I'm very consistent in working with. And so once that's done, I get a new one. I don't switch them back and forth, so that if I need to go back, I can look and see. And now I trust them enough to bring forward what I need, but it's still an investigation. If I don't ask the question, they're not going to tell me. Mm-hmm. The records do not go against our free will. I realize how unfounded my fear was in the beginning, because there is just love there. And there's enough love for my uniqueness and all of our uniqueness, that all they want to do is support us, to be our friend.
Absolutely.
Yeah. In Akashic Record Consultants International, we call them the Lords, Masters, Teachers, and Loved Ones. And they have become my divine support system, and I rely on them. I'm not dependent on them, but there is an interdependence there that gives me a lot of comfort and that I trust. Mm-hmm. And they're not my only ones either. I also look in my 3D, who my friends are, who are my teachers, who can I trust, what modality. And Mother Nature is a great one. Sometimes I'll not want to go into the records because I just want to sit in my misery for a while. somehow it's benefiting me. I'll take my dog on a really long hike, and then when I come back, it's like I've seen enough of the natural order to understand, okay, Wendy Sue, it's time.
Yeah. Well, I love the fact that, number one, so many people just don't understand what the masters, teachers, loved ones, and guides are. And that this is this beautiful field of unconditional love. And, and I'm just like you. I mean, they bring this information forward that we are all love. It doesn't matter what your role is on this earth. You are love. You have this infinite, beautiful existence of the soul that resides within you that is in direct connection with this unlimited form of love. And it's so interesting. And like you, when I'm doing sessions as well, is there has never been anything negative ever said to anyone about anyone or about any situations. Now they may bring it to you, the information to you, where this is what's causing this action in you, and they may be pretty clear and blunt about it. But it's always said, it's always meant from this intention with love. But the other aspect of what you're bringing up is that people don't really understand the complexity of the Akashic field. And it's not a fortune teller. The field isn't here to tell you when you're going to meet that soulmate. It's there. They can provide the information. However, there's so much more in depth than just, I always call them surface related questions, because people don't know how deep they can go. And so I always call this type of work spiritual psychology, because as you're talking about this and you understand that, the records have the ability to dig down deep within each one of us and bring to the surface what's causing us distress, what's causing the chaos within us, what's causing the conflict it's going on within ourselves. And, there's so much more than what people can possibly conceive of unless you've witnessed it, unless you've been able to stand in it, unless you can really understand how they can guide us through every second of the day, and that ability that they have to hold us and love us unconditionally, regardless of what we perceive as mistakes, or I did this right, I did this wrong, or I should have, would have, could have. And, in recognizing and understanding there's no mistakes. There's something in everything that happens. And when we have the ability to see it from their perspective, that spiritual perspective, what we see on the earthly plane, this 3D plane, and how our minds interpret it, we can recognize how limited we are in understanding the vastness of really who we are and what's around us and surrounding us.
Well, when you're looking at, so there's that country western song, Thank God for Unanswered Prayers, right? Our ego can be very attached to something. The ego's not bad in the records in any way, shape, or form. We need it. But it can be very attached to something. Our mind can be like, this is the way I vision it. This is the way it's going to happen. I just know it's going to happen this way. And when it doesn't happen that way, then we're sad, or we feel this huge loss or this grief, or I've failed. When somebody dies, naturally there's a grief. And once we move through that grief, then we can see the opportunity that not having that person in our life provides. Right. So we end up with these new opportunities, and their records are definitely experiential. Mm-hmm. They're in our bodies, they're surrounding us, they're energetic, and that information that they contain is every single thing that's happened to us since we left source. Mm-hmm. Since we left source. And you brought up soulmates, and that's part of the thank God for unanswered prayers sometimes.
Yeah.
That because they'll often come back to somebody and say, what's your definition of a soulmate? Because a soulmate may be the person that's going to teach you the most in this life through those difficult lessons.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it is important to find our own definitions in these esoteric words as well.
Absolutely, because again, I mean, the word soulmate and soul or twin flame, they've been romanticized, and it's that romantic serious. Like when I'm seeing like the book that is the fictional love story, and that this is the label that soulmates have gotten, but the truth is, this it's it can be the one that one individual that kicks you in the tail and knocks you down and
over and over and over again.
and again. So people ask me about when am I going to meet my soulmate, and I was like, of course in my head I'm like, are you sure you really want to? Yeah. So.
Definitions actually are really good. Once we talked about taking our own unique truth and our own unique place on the planet, and we're all very, very, very necessary.
Absolutely.
Because nobody else can occupy our space and our place.
Yep.
But our own definitions are really important too. Like for a soulmate for me would just be somebody to walk beside me.
Yep.
But other people need that deep love, intense experiential understanding where we get to talk brain to brain. I want to use my own words.
Yeah.
I don't want to telepathically talk to you. I'll do that to my dog, but I want you to talk to me.
Uh-huh.
So it's really good to sit back and get curious about what it is that you're really looking for, what it is you're really inviting in, what it is that you have already had that you never want again, and what it is that you've already had that you really want again. And to separate those two things in a way that allows you to keep what's best for you and move the rest forward. Our brain attaches oftentimes, the words I'm hearing is that sometimes we will stay in a really defiant or angry relationship because it's the best sex we've ever had. Well, let's separate out the best sex we've ever had from the violence and the anger and go forward knowing that the best sex is possible.
Right.
But we don't need that other with it.
Well, and I think that people get attached to ideas. Like, okay, well, when I met this person, I had this real strong connection with who they are. And then as time progressed, it's just like that scenario that you just said. Well, maybe that connection happened because there was a soul contract that brought you two together.
Yes.
But just because you have that initial feeling doesn't mean that it doesn't play out, and you have to hold them on. You don't have to hold on to them. It's like we stay in that place of, well, this was the experience, and I'm going to stay in this relationship no matter how tumultuous it is because I had that original connection. And
then we keep going back for it.
Yeah, and I see that happen a lot. That's a real big prominent thing. So, if in this process, and I don't know how we just got off on this subject, but we're going down the road that we didn't plan on here. But the point is being open again and not being so attached to an experience or the past that you think you have to stay in it. When you're moving forward, you're not moving backwards. And one of the questions that we have that we were going to discuss is about chaos. And so this is kind of leading us into, I'm going to stay in this chaotic relationship because I had this connection when we started, and recognizing what chaos is and when to step away from chaos. So do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, what I'm hearing and what I believe in is that we rarely only have two options, to leave or to stay. There's I don't want to say always because I'm not an absolute girl, but honestly, most of the time there's a third or a fourth option. But because we're so taught to be black and white, we think this or that, this or that, this or that. And if we can get out of the this or that theory and really sit back, ask for advice, maybe we need a hiatus. Maybe we need separate bedrooms. Maybe I need to stop eating wheat. Or maybe I need to recognize that I'm premenopausal. Or maybe or maybe I actually do need to go to the ball game once in a while. And instead of just like wanting them to do my stuff all the time. So it's fascinating how when we settle in and we look at the strands of what we're calling chaos, and chaos almost always indicates time for change.
Yeah. Oh,
but it doesn't have to be this or that. When we're in confusion, when we're in chaos, it means something's shifting and our body doesn't know what to do with it. And then our heart's like, oh, and then our body's like, oh,
yeah.
And
Yeah.
Spirit's take my hand. We're going to lead you through this if you're available.
Yeah. Well, that's a deep, yeah.
Really help.
Yeah. Well, and that understanding that change thing, nothing stays the same, as that old saying goes. Nothing stays the same. We constantly shift and change, and again, depending on our growth and where we're going and what we've processed through, the picture continues to change, because that's what our journey is as humans, is to continue to grow. And recognizing that there all are alternatives. It's not black and white. Nothing is black and white. Relationships are definitely not black and white. It's almost like what I'm seeing is that somebody walking in a dark room and trying to feel their way through, to get to the end, to the door so that they can, and I'm seeing the big exit sign, but sometimes you just kind of have to feel your way through it to figure out how to get to that next stage of where you're meant to go. And it's not necessarily the fact that you just have to leave somebody's life or they have to leave yours or whatever. It's all part of the growing stage. Now, obviously, it's depending on what the situation is, and that's up to you as individuals to figure this out.
Right. We're not, right.
Yeah.
I'm also seeing that it's important to know whether we're prone to spiritual bypass.
That's a good one.
God told me to do this, or the records told me to do this, or I'm just going to go over here because I have to stay on the high side and I can't feel my anger, and and I'm just going to let you do your thing while I go over here and do my thing. Right? We're in it for a reason.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. Let's find out what's going to happen. And you're right. Every individual is different. Every situation is different. And it's important that we look at our need, if we're in a really bad situation, to stay in a situation which keeps us small.
Yeah.
Sometimes we stay in situations to stay small, to keep ourselves from, well, there's that saying, it's not our darkness that we're afraid of, it's our light.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's our light that we're afraid of.
Well, and that I like the term small, because that's a key word. And my guides use that a lot. And basically they refer to any form of abuse as something that makes you feel small, whether it's just the most simple word that is totally unintentional from the speaker. But if I receive it and it makes me feel small, then I need to look at it. I need to recognize what that smallness is that's keeping me there. So
and look at the belief systems in that staying small too. If your parents never asked for help, chances are you might not ask for help. You might not want to go get the services that are available to you to get you out of a situation.
Yeah.
Well, we have to look at what's true for us, what our environment was, what our genetics were, what's our ancestry, what are our people like.
Yep.
No pain, no gain.
Yeah.
That's, not true.
Not true. Not true. Not true at all. Yeah. And extremely significant in understanding that big picture, for sure.
Yeah.
So one of the last questions that I have for you is moving into self-care and being aware of, when we're stuck. I guess when we're stuck in that, what I'm hearing is the term blame game, and blaming others, blaming ourselves, blaming, whatever it may be. What are some ideas that you have in order to help take care of ourselves?
So I'm reviewing my process. And honestly, in my process, I let myself just go into it for 15 minutes. Just move that emotion forward, because if I just try and take the high road, or I try and do something else without really acknowledging that this energy is sitting here with me.
Yep.
I don't know if it's necessarily blaming, but the more I try and stuff it, or the more I try and poo-poo it, the louder it gets, and then it'll squirt out sideways and be inappropriate, always at the worst time. So I let myself go into it, whether it's a pretend tantrum or a yelling into my pillow. There's all kinds of tools for that. And then I try and take an honest look at myself. I think it's important to know who you are at the core. I'm kind and I'm stubborn. I'm bossy and I want to have it my way. And oftentimes I know what's happening, but where am I tipping? I know it's true. And where am I tipping energetically into the control? So the more I know my propensities and can find out where I'm at on the timeline of my experience, like that unique experience that I'm dealing with right now, it helps me to then start taking responsibility and say, well, that's true for me. This part is true for me, and that's not theirs. And honestly, a lot of times I'll have my records open during a serious conversation, because I can hear them say, that's yours, Wendy Sue. Oh no, that's theirs. Don't even address it. Like where I'd want to go into defense. It's like, well, you did this. It's like, shh. So it's silence, listening are two of the most important tools that you can have. Hearing somebody else's experience, it doesn't mean you have to take it on.
Yeah.
When we get into that chaos of back and forth and arguing, and they said this and and I have to have something to come back. What's wrong with walking out of the room? What's wrong with just listening to somebody else and say, thank you for telling me how you feel, and letting it be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Our engagement and how we engage with it is so important. So for me, self-soothing is one thing. Self-care is another.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we address our self-care. How do you take care of yourself?
Well, I don't take care of myself like I should, but I do a lot of trying to figure out how to get my quiet time. Quiet time and alone time is significant for me. Understanding the tools that are out there. I do a lot of drummings. I go to a lot of sound healings. I do massage therapy. I receive massage therapy. All of the tools that can keep me in balance. And do I stay in balance? No. Again, because we may be on edge about something, and we're driving down the highway and somebody cuts us off and we lose it. Welcome to being a human. This is just kind of all part of the process. But I also recognize that when I get, I'm hearing the word defensive. When I get defensive, then I recognize that there's something that's going on within me that I need to look at and address. And that's a big part of self-care, is being able to take the time to look at what's throwing me off the deep end here. Why am I losing my patience? Why am I feeling so frustrated? What's going on within me that's triggering me to react the way that I am? And that kind of goes back into taking the time, not ignoring who you are, really focusing and staying with, okay, something's going on here. I'm going to make the time to really look at what's happening within me so that I can try to resolve whatever that is that I'm experiencing. And then that'll kind of help us get down our path. But again, that reminder that we are so human. We are so human. We've got our experiences. We've got our beliefs. We've got other people's actions that we're taking in. We have other people's energy that we're taking in. All these different factors that understanding self-care is extremely important. Recognizing that if you're going into a room and the energy feels really uncomfortable, how are you going to handle that? Are you going to stay there? Or are you going to go ahead and leave? Are you going to absorb other people's stuff? Being empathetic, but recognizing that if somebody's telling me a story that I don't own it, being able to keep that separateness, in this energy field, because I think that's another thing that people really aren't fully aware of how energy affects us.
Well, and that's what the records were talking. That's what they were just telling me as you were talking. You talked about massage and some other things. It doesn't have to cost money to do self-care. Excuse me. So if we know our propensities, if we know that we have If someone's dragging a screaming child out of Walmart and you're going to be like, oh, that poor child is going to be abused when it gets in the car and its dad's going to spank it, right? That's our story.
Yep.
We don't know what happened inside the store and what lesson the child's being taught. So really knowing what our stories are, we can take a bath, we can talk to a neighbor, we can cook a meal for somebody and deliver it, which gets us out of our own way.
Yep.
So it doesn't have to cost a lot of money to be aware of this self-care piece.
Yeah. Which that's perfect. Yeah, I love that. I love it. Being able to get back in your heart and staying in that heart space.
Yes.
Yeah, is what's important.
And at Akashic Record Consultants International, we have a grace point that's in the center of your palm, and you just take a breath and, if there's anyone or anything that has hurt me in the past, knowingly or unknowingly, I forgive and release it.
Yeah.
If I have hurt anyone in the past, knowingly or unknowingly, I forgive and release it.
Mm-hmm.
If I've hurt myself in the past, knowingly or unknowingly, I forgive and release it for the highest good of myself and others.
Mm-hmm.
It can be that simple.
Yeah.
To bring us back to the heart, breathe. We don't have to know what we're forgiving or why we're forgiving. It's just like, I know that I have something here that I need to clear.
Yeah. And I think that that's an excellent way to end this. I think that's, getting back to the heart. And that's really what it all is all coming down to, is just getting back to the heart. So, Wendy, we haven't really even talked about what all services you offer and how can people get in touch with you.
So my website is, well, first of all, my last name is Wahl. I did not put it up on the screen. It's WAHL. And my website is within-view at .com. So WITHIN-VIEW.com. Email is withinview@gmail.com. I offer at Akashic Record Consultants, and I teach. And the information that comes through me, through the records, is as much energetic as it is informational. So there's also an energetic transposition that happens between anybody that's doing a consult and working with somebody. I also do Reiki, and kind of hard to put into words, isn't it, Lisa?
It is.
I perform weddings. I do funerals, group consults, business consults. I was in the corporate world for years before I got into this. So I'm happy to.
Yeah, you have a hodgepodge of talents and gifts. Well, Wendy, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate it, and I enjoyed this conversation very much. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all for listening.
Thank you. And we'll see you guys next time.
Take care.